Hi. My name is Aaron, this is my show Re-Education, and this is Pride Month. And somehow, of course, because the way that our community is, the way that, not our community, the way that the fucking world is, now all of a sudden it's okay for neo-Nazis to be given a police escort through the center of a fucking parade that was marked by police violence. Holy fuck, I can't do this right now. This is so fucked. See, nobody has to die for this shit to be emotional. Nobody has to actually get hurt for this shit to be emotional. This is absolutely fucked. This is something that just really fucking bothers me. Hi, my name is Aaron. This is my show Re-Education, and I've had to re-record this video probably 8 times now because I just can't seem to hold it together emotionally. This is Pride Month. This is something that should be celebrated. This is a month when we take a look back at the revolutionaries that helped secure equal rights for the LGBT community back in the 1960s. Now, for those of you who don't know, the Pride Month is basically a commemoration of the Stonewall riots. As the story goes, back in the 1960s, the Stonewall Inn was one of the few places where the LGBT community could actually get together and be out and proud without feeling ashamed or scared that they were going to lose something. You see, back in the 60s, it wasn't like the way it is now. Back in those days, you couldn't be out and proud at your workplace. You could lose your job. You couldn't be out and proud in the public sphere. You could be ostracized or harassed or physically assaulted. And not a lot of people would care about that. Definitely the police wouldn't. And you couldn't be out and proud in your own family because you would be disowned or labeled some sort of sex pest or a predator. But back in those days, they did have somewhat of a bar community that they could associate with. Not many of these bars, these gay bars, were actually ran by homosexuals, of course not. But it was a place for them to be able to feel safe, feel like they could be in a community that was accepting, something that was different from the rest of the world at the time. And one of these bars was the Stonewall Inn. Now, back in those days, a lot of these bars were suffering from being raided by police on a very frequent basis. It would happen all the time. And it was getting to the point where the LGBT community was getting fucking sick of it. They wanted to stand up and do something, so they did. Under stress, people are able to do a lot of amazing things. And these people, after facing such incredible stress, were able to do the most amazing of things. In record time, they were able to put together organizations, newspapers, clubs, and all manner of groups that were able to fight against things like that. They started marches. They started riots because they thought, as we all do today, that they should have equal rights, that they should be treated like normal people, because that's what they were. That's what they are. They shouldn't be treated as second-class citizens. And because of that, this led to the gay liberation movement. It was one of those landmark times in history where things actually changed for the better. It doesn't happen all the time when people are actually able to fight against the system they're under and see something change and actually see a difference being made. This was one of those times. All of those people that fought in those days, that were part of those riots, that were in that revolution, are heroes. They should be looked at as nothing less. And yet today we have completely strayed away from this idea. No longer is the gay liberation movement or the LGBT movement or Pride Month looked at as being revolutionary. I mean, it does still have certain aspects to it that is, but it's not looked at as being that. It's looked at now as being a fucking marketing campaign. Yeah, capitalists are able to look at gay pride or gay culture and turn it into a commodity. It's called reappropriation. It's something that capitalism is extremely good at. They take something that is important in our culture and they turn it into something to sell shoes or fucking Pepsi. For example, the Black Lives Matter movement was reorchestrated, repurposed by Pepsi to sell Pepsi. Everybody remembers the ads. Everybody knows that the Colin Kaepernick incident where he took a knee to protest the police violence and brutality that happens to black people every single day. We take a look at that and we can see that capitalism has reappropriated that too and turned it into a way to sell fucking sneakers. We can see that the modern social justice movement and the modern feminism movement has been reappropriated and turned into something that can sell razors by Gillette. This is what happens all of the time. This is something that is a cancer to the community. But this video isn't about just capitalism. I wanted to put that part in there because it's something that really bothers me, but it's not the main issue. The main issue is back in those days, back in the 1960s, back during those Stonewall riots, the reason why the people were rioting, the reason why people stood up and wanted to demonstrate was partly because of the police violence and brutality that they seen in their community. They seen the police beating them. They seen people being hauled off to jail for the most ridiculous of crimes. And that's part of the reason why they stood up, to fight back against the establishment, to fight back against the state. Now cut to 2019. All of those rights, all of those freedoms, all of those liberties that were fought so hard by these individuals, by these revolutionaries, are being curtailed. They are being stepped back. What do I mean by this? Well, for example, trans people were just recently barred from being able to enter into military service. Not that I want anybody to fight in that fucked up military, but they were barred from being able to serve their country because of their sexual orientation, because of their gender identity. People in our country, in our society, are constantly having their rights and freedoms curtailed. The people that have the least powerful voices are seeing those voices silenced ever more often, ever more frequently, under the guise of, what is it? Nationalism? Hatred? Just sheer bigotry? Yeah, it's all those things. And more. The establishment has created this idea in everyone's mind that somehow people of a different sexual orientation or of a different gender are somehow these sexual predators, just like they've said in the past. This is a constant and very common argument that these fucked up individuals like to make, that somehow people that are having consenting relationships or changing their bodies to reflect the way they feel inside is somehow predatory or somehow abhorrent, because it's not normal for the general public. It's not normal for them to see people wanting to actually feel accepted for being different. We look at differences as though it's some sort of thing we have to eradicate because we don't understand it, because it's different to us that we just must hate and destroy all of it. This is the erosion of freedom, and it's only marked more recently by what happened in Detroit just a couple of days ago. During a Pride event, there was a group of neo-Nazis that decided to crash the event. They came in waving flags, swastika flags, wearing Nazi regalia, armbands with swastikas on them, yelling hateful language, "Jews will not replace us," "blood and soil," and screaming the most disgusting obscenities that you possibly ever have heard. And all the while carrying around their little penis extension firearms that they like to carry on their backs so fucking much. These people are pathetic. They are disgusting. They are the dregs of human society, and yet they were being escorted by, guess who? The fucking police. Because this is what happens in our society. This is how it started, was from the riots in Stonewall. The police were doing raids. They were the ones that were stopping the LGBT community from being able to organize, get together, and find a fucking family, find a fucking community. The police were the ones that were doing that. The state was against them. And here they are again, marching these hateful bigots through the center of a fucking parade that is meant to symbolize our unity as people, that is meant to symbolize our ability to overcome our hatred, our bigotry, our past, and transcend into a place where we actually feel like we can be accepted in these spheres. I was getting emotional at the beginning of this video. I was having a hard time recording it because this is something that actually does hurt me quite a bit. It's something that actually physically makes me fucking sick to see these horrendous people, I don't even want to call them people, being marched through the streets by state representatives, by the ones that we were taught our entire lives are supposed to protect us, to serve and protect. That's the fucking slogan. But instead, they attack and destroy, and they allow for these hate mongers to go through and promote an idea of genocide, an idea of actual murder of LGBT individuals. They actively promote the death and destruction of a community that wants nothing more than to love the people who they want to love. And that's fucking disgusting. And as far as I'm concerned, these pathetic little gnats, these disgusting little individuals that should be flicked the fuck away, should have the common fucking decency to not be there, and the state should absolutely not give them a chaperoned escort through the center of it. They shouldn't get to use their freedom of speech as a weapon. They shouldn't get to use our First Amendment as something that they can hide behind so they can take the freedom of speech away from those individuals and put them into a place where they are silenced. A lot of skeptics or reactionaries or right-wingers like to use the argument, oh, but if you don't like what they have to say, then don't listen, or maybe fight back with your speech. But when people are actively using that freedom of speech as a form of terrorism, it does nothing more than silence those of us who have no voice at all. You don't get to hide behind the freedom of speech argument when you're trying to use that speech to take away the rights of other individuals by normalizing the idea that we should hate these people, by normalizing the idea that somehow these people are not the same as us, by dehumanizing them. You don't get to use your speech in that way and then have everyone agree that they should legislate to destroy what has been worked so hard to gain. People lost their lives. People still lose their lives today fighting for this cause. But somehow the state is allowed to march through the streets, literal terrorists that are trying to destroy our community, our way of life. They're trying to erode our rules, our laws, our freedoms, our equality. So they can have what? Their fucking ethno-state? Their fucking genocide of everyone who isn't like them? No, I'm not going to stand idly by and watch something like that happen. As far as I'm concerned, these pathetic little gnats, like I said, that need to be flicked away, they all came armed. That's right, they came to a family event, dressed as terrorists, dressed as the enemy, and they were wielding weapons that could murder and kill everyone there at a family event. They came through and tried to destroy that. But you can't. You can't destroy this movement. You can't walk in with a bunch of pathetic brown shirts and think that that's going to stop us. And as far as I'm concerned, if that is the case, that these people were allowed to march around with weapons that are meant for war, then why shouldn't the people in the LGBT community have them as well? Why is it that it's a fucking Colgate toothpaste float at the front of these parades and not something that could actually help, like the Socialist Rifle Association? Like I said, I don't think it's a great idea to have firearms at a family event, but I do know one thing is for sure. When those fascist little bigots were walking through the streets, it would have given me great joy to see an armed rebellion of LGBT and trans women escort them the fuck out. Over the past few years, we've made too many compromises, too many retreats. They invade our space and we fall back. They destroy entire countries and we fall back. Not again. The line must be drawn here, this far, no further. And we can't allow them to continue what they have started. At least, that's the way I look at it. My name is Aaron. If you do get a chance, please check out my Patreon. Every dollar does help fund this show. And yes, that was a quote from Star Trek. And no, I don't think that it's not useful here, even though he was talking about revenge. This isn't about revenge. This is about freedom. This is about justice. Thanks for watching.